meaning on the two-way platform. I'm Mark Halperin with Dan and Sean. We're here to guide you through the day. Peace, love, and understanding overflowing from our hearts, particularly for me today, as I am at the two-way international headquarters in Brooklyn, USA. Thank you for joining. Sean, what's your favorite thing about Brooklyn?
Yes.
Okay, Dan.
I say the Barclays. I mean, I'm just thinking.
No, Coney Island. Kids
Coney
love
Island.
it.
Correct answer. Coney Island. All right.
Although didn't even know that's where it was.
There's lots to choose.
Prospect Park is nice.
There's lots to choose from. Anyway, we're going to talk about Iran. We're going to talk about New York City and the mayoral race, reconciliation, a whole range of topics. And as we do, we'd welcome the participation of those of you who are on the two-way platform. If you'd like to get in the conversation, thrill of a lifetime to ask Sean and Dan any question you wish. Please raise your hand and get the opportunity to do that. If you're watching on X or on YouTube, do not put smack in the chat. Please do not put smack in the chat. No smack in the chat. If you want to write in the chat, please engage in spirited debate, but no smack in the chat. Gentlemen, here we go. The president's back in town after about a day at NATO, where he was hailed as Super Daddy. And he is doing an event at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, according to the White House, that is promoting the One Big Beautiful event. And as reported first by, I think it's Axios, right, Paul? Axios 103. Everyday Americans. Hold on. I'm going to have to.
It's a very emotional topic, the big, beautiful bill.
I know. This is a big deal.
It's not that. It's not that. It's the hay thief from Brooklyn. Anyway.
No, you're emotional.
This is a time-tested practice of taking not real Americans, but everyday Americans, which is the term Republicans seized upon at the convention in Milwaukee last year, to highlight the effects of the legislation. I'm amazed that Democrats haven't done more of this on the other side. In this case, George Bush used tax families. It's very effective. We'll see how much the president
show up for a hearing. You think they can put an event on?
Well, by the way, this is something I put up for you. Biden never did that ever.
Never. And Harrisberry did it. She would be with Beyonce, but anyway, that's what the president's doing. 1 o'clock, Caroline Leavitt will brief, and you can bet that many of the questions will be about the stupidest topic ever to dominate several news cycles. The various assessments of how effective the U.S. mission against Iran was. We'll talk about that in a minute. No idea what the vice president's doing, except watching Meghan McCain's interview, presumably with his wife, and perhaps reading the New York Times profile of his wife, in which she did not do an interview because her interview was Meghan. Pete Hegseth, moments ago, finished a briefing with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, extraordinary in at least two respects. We'll show you some of that, and we'll talk about it later today. He is on the Hill, the Secretary of Defense, and both of them, and Sean's friend Dan Kane with the CIA director, and Marco Rubio briefing members of Congress on Iran, a little late for some. Excuse me. Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic Women's Caucus has another abortion rights press conference at this hour. Speaker Johnson and other congressional leaders hold a congressional gold medal ceremony honoring U.S. Army Ranger veterans of World War II at 11. The Supreme Court will issue some decision shortly. We go off the air. Sorry, we won't be covering that live for you. All right, let's start with Iran. I had thought my spidey sense and a little bit of reporting suggested the Ayatollah might be dead. Wrong. Now he's not holding.
Well, we don't know.
He's not holding. He's not holding a copy of today's New York Post, so we can't be sure he's alive.
Maybe it's Tehran.
But here it is, 107 exactly. 107, what the Iranian state media purports to be a Today video of the Ayatollah, the first time we've seen him in a week. Roll the religious zealot.
We thank God Almighty for assisting our armed forces, enabled them to penetrate the multi-layers of defense set up by the enemies. All the military and non-military positions came under our attack. All these positions within the Zionist entity came under attack. The Zionist entity's aggression was met by lethal and fatal attacks and we succeeded in destroying the enemy's capabilities. And this is a message that the Zionist entity must come to know. Any aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran will have a dear cost, a big and high price.
Translation provided by Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone. No, just kidding. My greatest imitation I ever did was I used to do a great imitation of the guy who was used as Putin's translator, or not Putin, Gorbachev's translator. If someone wants to raise their hand and ask me to do it during the later part of the program, I will. Sean, does that sound like a man ready to negotiate a disarmament?
No pun. Well, actually, full pun intended. That's like a hostage video. That was a guy that was trying to save face to his own people. I now know what Baghdad Bob is doing post Iraq. I don't know, because I don't think that was I mean, that was a for domestic consumption only, to try to get them to believe that somehow we fought back against the Americans. But I wouldn't read anything into that of that sort in terms of negotiation or whatever, because it's not like that. That literally was intended just for the Iranian people.
Dan, yesterday the president said both we don't need negotiations and there are going to be negotiations.
Yes.
Will there be negotiations? Are we going to see Witkoff in Geneva or, I don't know, London or somewhere negotiating with or without the Israelis, a inspection regime and everything else that I assume will be necessary to ensure that Iran doesn't rebuild a nuclear program, whatever the state of the program is currently?
Yeah, I mean, that you just hit the nail on the head. I don't see how there isn't. I mean, trust but verify. Somehow you got to try to figure out what is the reality on the ground. And the second part is the regime, let's assume he is still alive, is still there. Their stated goal is still to get nuclear weapons. Well, not officially. They say it's for peaceful purposes, but to develop a nuclear program. So what then? I mean, if you got rid of them, are we all comfortable saying they can continue to try to develop a peaceful nuclear program?
So can we just look, here's the funny thing about this. We all have these conversations as if I think, to me, maybe this is just like no one wants to say it out loud. But here's the reality. Iran, no matter what they say or no matter what meetings they attend and agree to on paper, will consistently seek a nuclear weapon. Full stop. That's their goal. They are going to do it. The question is, how do we stop them or prolong them? Full stop. That's it. There is no middle ground.
Well, there is, I think, if the president's efforts and the U.S. military's efforts, are men and women efforts, were successful enough that the regime is now shattered and they want to go in a different direction. I know it seems unlikely, certainly without regime change. Maybe now there can be a very tough negotiation that involves genuine inspection.
Correct. But my point is, regardless of how many inspections, they will wake up and go, let's go down to the basement and keep building a nuclear weapon. Like, they are not going to stop.
I understand your skepticism, but if Witkoff walks in and says,
right,
we degraded your program substantially. We will do it. We'll keep doing it. Netanyahu can't be restrained. He'll keep killing you. The person I'm sitting across the table from, Netanyahu will kill you.
I agree. I will sign a piece of paper, Mr. Halperin, and I will promise, definitely promise that I will not build a nuclear weapon. Please give me that piece of paper so I can sign it, and we will have peace together. Long live the United States.
So, Sean, what would you tell the president to do now?
Yeah, I was going to say, then he's going to humiliate Trump.
No, so the answer is, there's a difference between what you want to sell, which is, we had a great meeting, they committed, we're going to do inspections. We all know that, and they'll probably buy into it to some degree. But you cannot, in any world, honestly believe they'll live up to whatever.
Then what's your proposal for eliminating the Iranian nuclear program?
No, my proposal is either make a choice. The choice is either you are fighting for 4 years to be able to say, during my 4 years as president, Iran upheld an agreement and we didn't have a nuclear weapon, and then it's some other dude's problem in 4 years. That's what most politicians do.
Right.
Or you say, we're going to go in and we're going to demand inspections, which they won't allow. We're going to come in and I mean, again, So the question is, what do you really want? Do you want a talking point? Do you want to claim that you got what you wanted for the 4 years? Or are you actually going to pursue something that I frankly don't think will ever happen, and then have to admit some kind of political defeat?
I don't
Well, wait a
understand.
second.
I don't understand your
So,
position. Go ahead,
yeah, I
Dan.
don't either, because then what was Trump trying to achieve before the bombing was a peace deal with them,
I
right?
know. And what did I say then?
No, I get it.
Well, we
So,
know
I
what you
mean,
said then, but you're the only one in the world who just wants to let Iran build a weapon.
No. If it were me, that's no. You didn't have. If you want me to go in, I say screw it. Let's go in, get like full on, make it
Regime
to your point.
change.
I take that conversation a lot farther.
Hey, can
Here's the
somebody
deal.
can somebody have Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon call Sean, please? Dan,
Wait a second. I'm
Dan.
getting some texts.
Dan.
Look, I have a very personal different view about what we should do. I'm giving you my assessment of what's going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Dan, where are the Democrats now? So first they were
Let me go back to Sean.
First they were the president doesn't know what he's doing. Then it was he's gone to war and maybe it was a good idea. Maybe the military did an okay job, but he didn't get our approval. Then it was, well, look, this fragment of an aftermath report says it didn't do nearly as well as the president said. Where are they now? Not where they should be. Where are they now?
I mean, look, they're just finding something to attack them. I mean, that's it. There is no position. There is no goal. There is no set of ideas. It is just, what can we find a way to attack Trump? How can we say that he's a failure, or what he did is not a success? Or I just, at this point, kind of, you start to lose credibility when on every single instance, you're just saying, nope, not good. Nope, not good. Nope, not good. Again, it's similar to the immigration stuff. Those that are serious on this issue, and I would consider people like Mark Warner and Jim Himes serious, have kind of started to go quiet. So rather than the party pushing the thoughtful people out front, the loudest voices in the base just criticize, and everyone else says, well, I don't want to pick a fight with them.
All right. We are where on this. I thought I understood how the media works, but apparently I don't. We are today where we were yesterday. The president continues to overstate the case. The people around him, like the Secretary of State and his spokesperson and the Secretary of Defense, pretend attitudinally and stylistically and tonally that they're agreeing with the president, but they're not actually going as far as the president in most cases in qualifying the damage done to the Iranian nuclear program. And then the media is just, it's insane, because Pete Hegseth is correct. They put out a fragment of a preliminary report and they framed it as if the president was lying. It's insane what they did.
Oh,
Hold on. I'm not quite done. Sorry. The fragment of a preliminary report by one part of the intelligence community should not have been cast, as CNN and the New York Times did, as some definitive judgment on whether it worked or not, or how effective it was. It's insane. And it opens the door to the Secretary of Defense and the president have the debate about fake news. Here's the president, 105, and this will dominate the briefing today. The press should stop. The fake news, CNN is so disgusting and incompetent, dumbest anchors in the business. And then here's Pete Hegseth, who spent the first 10 minutes plus of his briefing today not doing what the head of the Joint Chiefs did, which is tell incredible stories about, like, the guy who spent 15 years studying how to conduct this mission. Incredible American story. Instead, this is a minute of what Pete Hegseth did for 11 minutes. 109, please.
What President Trump accomplished in NATO yesterday was game-changing and historic. A shift in burden sharing to European responsibility in NATO that most would have said was impossible.
Hold on, this is the wrong clip. Forget it.
That's a good clip, by the way.
It is a good
NATO
clip, but
needs
it's
to
on a
pay
different
up.
topic. Just take my word for it.
Started in the first
He
term,
spent the whole
and
briefing
here
attacking the
in
president.
his second
Paul,
term-
stop this. Anyway, Dan, why are people in the press continuing to lie about this? And why is the president continuing to overstate it? And why are we having this national debate about nothing when our focus should be on what's going to happen next to deal with the Iranian nuclear and missile program?
Well, look, I respectfully, guys, I actually don't think it's a bullshit story, which is to say, look, you can't have it. Well, look, don't cut me off, please. Like, you can't have it both ways, guys. You can't say that Trump is always allowed to exaggerate and embellish and make kind of these outlandish statements and then turn around and say, Well, then how can everyone go chase that shiny red ball? He likes to toss shiny red balls. So his shiny red ball was, which it always is, strength, victory, clarity, dominance. You're weak, we won, right? That's his playbook. In this instance, he effed it up a little because we don't know. So you're right.
100%.
So, okay, it is silly that everyone is obsessed with it. But when you live by the shiny red ball and you die by the shiny red ball a little bit. So look, I think you're right. The real question is what comes next. It's the first conversation we had. I wish people would kind of get off of it a little bit. But to say the media is wrong to focus on what the president said about a war
it's
effort,
not wrong. They're not wrong to focus on what the president said, but they're wrong to counter it by saying, here's a leaked sliver of a preliminary report from one part of the intelligence community done in the immediate aftermath is a counter to the president's position is crap.
Well, no, but yeah, hold on
It's
a sec.
crap.
It's our own intelligence department that put the first one out. Let me ask the two of you.
No,
Hold on.
no, one of 13.
Wait. Let me ask you both a question. Do you guys think it's possible that the Trump administration would lean on other intelligence agencies to put stuff out to counter the narrative?
Of course. Sean.
Enough
help me.
said.
Sean,
Wait,
no,
hold
not
on.
enough said. That's a different topic.
No,
Yeah,
they're all related.
But by the way, I'm not sure I agree with that at all. I think there's a difference between what gets pushed and what doesn't. But I don't. Most of those intel agencies would never compromise. Like what they would never manufacture stuff.
The operative word there is most.
Yes. Can you be a political appointee and not play ball?
So let me just go back to a couple things. There's one overarching point that I've made before, but I'll make it now because to Mark's point, why does the president? So I've always found this interesting. Wake up and start listening to how a morning show starts, whether it's Today's Show or GMA. The story everyone is talking about, the story like this. The president, if you're Trump, he's learned from the media how to sell stuff. And they're the ones who created this idea that everybody's watching this story, the story that is captivating the nation. They create this idea of exaggerating. Number two, when it comes to, I said this before, and so I'm clear on this. When you look at the satellite imagery, of which is now public, and I guarantee you, from what I have seen in the past, the president has a lot more detail to this. From the top down, if you're a civilian or someone who's not into reading battle damage assessment, especially this kind of stuff, which is not that common, and you look at the degradation of that area, a normal person would say, wow, that's blown to smithereens. For the intel community, they're actually assessing the capabilities within there, not the physical destruction of it, right? So I say that because if you're the president of the United States or a civilian and someone shows you satellite imagery of before and after, the same way you do after a hurricane, by the way, where they say, look at the area and you go, my God, that's destroyed. No one goes in and says, well, technically the fiber was underground, so it's not destroyed. It's still there. There's some construction damage. And so I get why the president has the assessment he does. The intel community is assessing the capabilities that still exist. And it's going to take, as I said yesterday, and frankly, I said this before, it was brought up at the press conference yesterday in the Netherlands. It's the Israelis that we're going to be leaning on. They've got the human intelligence that's going to go in to those tunnels to figure it out. It's going to take months to get a definitive assessment of where things are. But I think it's pretty obvious from the satellite imagery that there was massive degradation to that facility. Okay.
Yeah. That's true, but not what the president said.
I get it, but I understand why he's saying that. Because if he's looking at this, he says, God, it's blown to smithereens. Yeah. And that's the big difference. But for CNN and the New York Times to lean into one initial assessment, to your point, and claim this. And again, I think they're absolutely right to talk about the record of this one particular reporter who has a history of exaggeration.
I disagree. I disagree because she reported it the way everybody's reporting it. So her past it does not apply to the New York Times. It doesn't apply to all the other news organizations who framed it the same way. You guys are just trying to seize on her past failings.
Yes.
To slam the media. It's not germane in this case.
Okay, but I will say this: the one other thing that it's funny how
it's just a trick.
The Politico playbook assessment of this is anytime that you criticize the media's reporting, that you are somehow anti-First Amendment and I mean, it is unbelievable how you want to talk about going to extreme.
Put up 104. Put up 104.
Any type of criticism, the Brit who just showed up in our country suddenly embraces our Constitution as the basis for everything that's great. It's
right. So this is what Sean's talking about, and this is so outrageous. So here's how they're framing it. They say the president is spooked by a bombshell leak. Bombshell leak? It's not a bombshell. It's really not a bombshell. Supporters say Trump is generalized by what he claims is false. No, sorry, it's the first part I want to read, not that. Critics see a president spooked by a bombshell leak that has undermined his authority. Undermined his authority? No. He undermined his own authority by exaggerating the case. It's not a bombshell leak. This is just, it is such bad reporting, bad framing. But Sean, it's got nothing to do with one reporter. It's the whole press. It's the whole
guys,
press.
I actually don't know that.
Dan, how is it a bomb? Dan, one of, what is it, 13, right? One of 13 parts of the intelligence community, all of whom will have an opinion, including the CIA opinion yesterday, whether it came ordered by the president or not. 1/13 preliminary judgment. They quoted it partially. Okay, that is not a bombshell. That's not a bombshell.
Hold on a sec. What is a bombshell is he said we obliterated their nuclear capabilities. Do all of us agree he completely exaggerated it and we have no idea?
100%. And I've said it four times, and I've pointed out that no one else in the administration, and Sean won't say obliterated because we don't know.
I don't know
what though. But that is a.
I also don't have access to what he does.
He has to sell strength and victory.
It's an outrage. It's an outrage, and it should be covered. But it's not a bombshell
either. I think one other point that's not getting brought up.
We disagree on that.
Okay, one thing that I found fascinating is for 2 weeks, if not longer, the entire DC establishment was captivated by Signalgate. And yet here we have a true leak of classified information, and no one seems to give a crap. It's funny how when the leak occurs to benefit, to hate Trump, it's okay. Not one of these friggin' outlets has brought up the fact that somebody leaked classified information, but they give a crap as soon as Pete Hegseth goes on to Signal to talk about something. Then it's without actually it being classified, and there's a debate about that. I'll put a plug in that. But this is actual classified information, and not one of these same media outlets that so cared about our classified information for weeks on end gives a crap. They don't, it's not even come up in a single story, because as long as the leak benefits them and the narrative that they're trying to push, which is anti-Trump, they don't care.
Zero Pinocchio.
And how does everyone feel when the leaks come out about Biden and the right goes absolutely berserk with it?
What leaks? What leaks about Biden?
What leaks? There's no leak, dude. It was on TV.
Half the stuff for the Afghanistan stuff during that withdrawal got leaked.
I don't know.
I don't know about that. Anyway, we got to move on. We got to move on.
You're the record.
I don't know what you're talking about. Honestly, I don't know. All right.
Okay.
Again, raise your hand if you want in on the conversation. Mayor of New York City, some developments yesterday, some Democrats being quiet about Mondami, some being critical of him and distancing themselves. But people like Bill Clinton, who had endorsed Andrew Cuomo, Jerry Nadler, Jewish congressman from the Upper West Side, my congressman, endorsing him and embracing him. The business community is making up fantasy options about things that they could do to get some other candidate in the race, or do a write-in and waste their more money to try to beat him. And Mayor Adams is announcing his campaign for today. Some business leaders are saying, let's go in on Adams to waste more money, in my view. So last night, Mondami, I think, has done 2 interviews. He did local NPR, and then Jen Psaki. Here he is from last night, number 106, with Jen Psaki on MSNBC.
I thought it was Psaki.
My message is that I am looking to lead this entire city, to represent each and every New Yorker. And that representation is not contingent on whether or not someone votes for me or someone agrees with me, because the responsibility of a leader is to reach out to all 8.5 million people who call this city their home. And I know that Jewish New Yorkers, like Jewish Americans, are fearful in this moment of anti-Semitism. They are fearful, especially after the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado. And they're fearful also in conversations that I have heard myself about life in this city. I spoke to a Jewish man in Williamsburg not too many weeks ago who told me about the fact that he now locks the door that he used to close, that he used to keep open for years because of a fear of who may come in. I spoke to a friend of mine after October 7th who told me about going to his synagogue for Shabbat services and hearing the door open behind him and turning around with a tremor going up his back, not knowing who was walking in and what they wished for them. And ultimately, it's through the conversations I've had with Jewish New Yorkers that I have developed a proposal for the Department of Community Safety that would include an 800% increase in funding for hate crime prevention programs. Because ultimately, we cannot simply say that anti-Semitism has no home in this city or no place in this country. We have to do more than talk about it. We have to tackle it. And that's what we will do through this funding and through this commitment. We will root out bigotry across the 5 boroughs.
Sean, do I remember correctly? Did you call him an anti-Semite yesterday? Am I remembered correctly?
I did. It's also great to know that he's sharing the same speechwriter that the Ayatollah is using, because it seems as though it's an equal amount of BS.
No, serious question. After hearing that, do you want to still say he's an anti-Semite after hearing that?
No, I actually think he heard what I said yesterday and said I better go on Jen Psaki's show and start reversing.
Non-responsive. Do you still think he's an anti-Semite?
I think that his past statements speak for itself, and yes.
Okay, Dan. There's these various scenarios of the business community and the billionaires and millionaires getting behind Eric Adams, of Cuomo maybe still running, although the New York Post is trying to force him out of the race, of doing a write-in, of getting somebody else somehow in the race. What's the percent chance that Monami is the mayor?
Probably 60%.
What? Really? Only
Why?
60? Fill out the other 40%. Oh, I think it's close to 100 right now.
No, I don't.
Fill out the other. Tell me who's elected.
Eric
in the other
Adams,
40.
I think we'll see. Look, first off, I thought that interview, what he said was great. Like, if you're going to make a pivot and you're going to that was a great.
Hold on. Before you go to that, you're saying Mondami 60, so a portion the other 40%. Adams, how much?
Yeah, 40%. It's
so you think it's just one of the two of them?
Yeah, I believe Cuomo said last night he's not going to run anymore.
No, he didn't. The New York Post reported that.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
The New York Post is trying to force him out.
I think the business community will tell Andrew, like, forget it, because we're not going to give a penny to you.
But you think it's binary. It's either Adams or Mondami.
Correct. That's it.
Can I ask one quick question though? And
I would not count out Eric Adams. First off, if the black community, which Mondami struggled with, rallies around him, it puts him right in the ball game right there. Right. You get the black community, you get Republicans, and then the question is, can Mondami expand that coalition a little bit? And the fact that was his answer last night tells me he knows he needs to potentially kind of sand some edges a little bit. So again, I think he's the favorite. This is a progressive city. He's got obviously a fervent base. But let's see. I don't underestimate Eric Adams a little bit.
Wow, I'm really surprised, Sean.
First of all, I think I kind of agree with Dan. I think the Republican, as we said yesterday, I think the Trump factor in this, if it gets involved, could make a big difference. So if Trump gets involved, I'm with Dan on the percentages. Just so I get both of you guys to, like, I cannot in any scenario see how Cuomo would want his name even on that ballot. Is there any scenario where you got? I mean, like, I think it's an embarrassment.
If the business community went to him, but I basically agree with you. It's not going to happen. It's not
I mean,
like,
happen. No. But even if the business community went to him, if I were him, I'd say, hey guys, I got planned. I got to be in the Hamptons this summer.
Yeah. All right, quickly, because I want to get. We got a lot of hands up.
Can I just make one quick point on this? Is just, you guys remember what we talked about yesterday on Mondavi, just so that everyone gets. This is Politico this morning. What Mondami means for Republicans. They see his pending nomination as a political gift and are moving to make the 33-year-old Democratic Socialist an albatross that they can tie to every dam. God, I wonder where they got that. Anyway, go ahead.
Dan, last question. And we got to move on because we got a couple more topics and we want to get everybody in. Nadler endorsed, Bill Clinton basically endorsed, Schumer and Jeffries have not, Hochul has not. Which Democrat are you most eager to see how they come out and why?
Hakeem Jeffries, because the House is most in play.
Yeah, good call. And for me, it's Jeffries and Hochul. All right, reconciliation.
For one.
What'd you say?
I said you asked for one.
No, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I asked you for one, but I gave two. Here's Sahil Kapoor of NBC News 108 is now saying that the solution for reconciliation is not for the Senate to jam the House so much as to pre-conference, not conference, pre-conference, the Senate version. Sean, is such a move possible?
It's not only possible. You have to use the C word at some point. And by the way, let's just
It's a P word. It's a P word.
No,
It's not a C word.
no.
Pre-conference starts with a
to
P.
the C word. The predicate to the C word. I'm going to go to ChatGPT and ask for a grammar.
Dan, what's the first letter of pre-conference?
Yeah.
C.
Wait, I just have to tell
predicate.
The entire audience for the last 4 months, these two prior to coming on air have argued over the difference between a pre-conference and a conference.
No. We've argued between a conference, a formal conference, and an informal.
No.
That's different than a pre-conference.
You're moving. Never the word formal has entered that. It is conference.
Incorrect.
Conference.
Incorrect. It's incorrect. We've talked about formal and informal. That's all we've talked about. You guys go look at the
on the record.
You guys are nuts. All right, Sean, the percent chance that by July 4th, the Senate has signed the reconciliation package into law. 0. Dan?
Well, that the president has, or that the Senate has enrolled it.
You know what I'm saying?
Senate has but there's because there's a quite
bill on the president's desk by July 4th.
I think it's 30-40%.
The correct answer is Dan, 30%. All right,
Sean, you know
0.
he wants it. You
John
know
says
July
0.
4th.
Wait till today's event occurs. All right, next and last, the Wall Street Journal says that the president's solution to being so frustrated with the Fed chairman is to name the successor very early, rather than start the interview process in September to name someone in September, even though the current Fed chair's term runs until next year. The Journal floats as the primary possibilities what I like to call my two Kevins, not Kevin McCarthy, Kevin Warsh, or Kevin Hassett. Sean, who will the president name, and when will he name them?
Well, when is going to be up to? I mean, he'll look for a lull.
It's like Clue, dude. You got to say who and when.
No, I'll give you the who.
Colonel Plum in September.
Well,
who's the who?
The candlestick in the library.
Who's the who?
Look, so here's how this goes. First of all, I'll just start the predicate. The president, like the FBI director, will not name someone he doesn't have a strong relationship with. That puts Kevin Warsh on the out. Everyone thinks that he's the favorite. I don't agree. He does not have a relationship with him. Therefore, I agree. He is out. Here is the order of succession. Should the Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Bessett, want it, it is his. If he doesn't, it's Kevin Hassett's.
Correct. That is the correct answer. Dan, you can take an alternative view if you wish, but Sean has stumbled into the truth, as they say on McLaughlin. He's correct. Okay. Yeah, and I don't think Scott Bessett wants it, so it will be Kevin Hassett.
No. That's right. I said if he chooses. I
understand what you said. I'm agreeing with you, but I'm also adding in the additional piece of data. He doesn't want it. And Kevin Hassett will be named the Fed chair in October or November. I can't tell you which, but in October or November. There you have it.
That's like Professor Plum or in the library or the study.
It's Professor Plum. He may have done it in the observatory, but he also may have done it in the library. We just don't know.
With the candlestick
at this time. All right. Now it's time for your questions and comments. Please raise your hand if you'd like to get in the conversation. Here comes Fran, who will tell us where she is and then what's on her mind. Fran, welcome to the morning meeting.
Thank you. From Mississippi. I sobbed when Trump was elected the first time. I reluctantly voted for him. I would have voted for Biden the second time, but he chose Kamala Harris as his running mate. And I really thought he was going to die in office, and I didn't want her to be the president. And then I voted for him the third time because I would say I'm 51% in favor of Trump. So,
Fran, how many times did you vote for Barack Obama for president?
1.
How many times did you vote for Bill Clinton?
2.
Okay. Interesting voting history. And you cried. Why did you cry? Why did you cry in 2016 when he won?
Trump's horrible. His personality's horrible.
Yeah.
He's not. He's a troll. I don't want my president to be a troll.
All right, Fran. Fascinating voting history.
I love his policies.
Yeah.
I don't like the person.
You speak for tens of millions.
I was just going to say, yeah.
I adore J.D. Vance. I think he's fantastic. However, these are a couple of my points. Sean, yesterday you interrupted Dan too many times. I love you, but I wanted to hear his points. Second one is I think we need somebody to unite our country. I suggest that J.D. Vance, as a Marine veteran, go up and do some kind of speech where he invites all the Democrats and he names them so and so. Like, Dan, you have so many veterans in your district. Sean, you have this military base in your district. I invite every person on the military services committee, whatever it's called, to the parade and get rid of all that crap that happened the last time and invite them up on the stage with the president. We need to unite the country. So
amen to amen to that one, Fran.
So that's my thoughts.
Okay.
I mean,
all right.
Fran, I think it's a great, I think one, you speak for tens of millions. Two, I've made this point before. Historically, after 8, or in this instance, it'll be basically 12 years, the country looks for a kind of change. They look for the opposite in style and substance from the leader that they have, right? So if you think about Bill Clinton, people, George W. Bush, I'll uphold the honor and dignity of the White House, kind of be quieter and more formal, right? After Bush with the wars, Barack Obama, a new generation, I'm going to get out of the wars, get past the 1960s, right? Donald Trump, like Barack Obama, not paying attention to the kind of working class. Joe Biden, we're going to calm down from the Trump era, right? A little bit. I will be very curious where the country is at the end of these 4 years. If they want the same, I can't see J.D. Vance pivoting away and doing what George H.W. Bush did to Reagan and saying we're going to be kinder and gentler, because I think Trump would lose it and be like, what do you mean I'm not perfect? So if you're a Democrat and you're thinking you got to be your authentic self, who is the person who is an authentic kind of calming voice and a unifier? And that, I think, is the interesting thing. Someone's going to try to be the louder Trump, the Democratic version of Trump, the punch him in the mouth at all times. We'll see. I think it's a great point you make. I think there's a lot of hunger for it.
Sean.
Thank you for recognizing me. I didn't want to jump in too early, Fran. I was going to note that it was the Armed Services Committee, but that would have been rude. So thank you for your points. I will take that going forward. Look, I get your point. I think that to Mark's phrase, you speak for tens of millions of Americans. I just don't think we're there right now. I think there's a lot of people who are still really upset. I dare say the word pissed is probably a fair assessment of where people are in terms of the climate, and they're not ready yet for this moment. And I say this as someone who's conflicted on this, because I share generally your view, but I'm also like, I'm tired for someone who was a conservative in college, where we were shut out. We had our speaker canceled because some lefties didn't like his position on a particular issue. I've dealt with this for decades, and it's always the right that is told, could you guys now let everybody, like, you guys should lead the way. Democrats over and over again, starting with Bork, going through, just over and over again, they get away with stuff. When the calls from Maxine Waters told people to gather around people from the Trump administration, get in their face. When Chuck Schumer said, Gorsuch, we're coming to get you. It's always explained away. They didn't mean it. It wasn't that bad. But everyone on the right is guilty of something. They need to define themselves. They need to apologize. And I'm not there yet. I'm not ready to just roll over and say, okay, now that the Republicans are in power, we should be the ones. Democrats have led this charge to divide this country. They've canceled people. It's not my philosophy, and I think I speak for most Republicans and conservatives. I don't really care what you do in your personal life. I don't care who you spend your quality time with or whatever, but I don't need you to impose your values on me. And that's generally the conservative philosophy. The left decides that they want to indoctrinate us, force us to abide by their way of life and their values. And I'm not willing to just roll over yet.
Well, it would shame that if Maxine Waters didn't show up when she was invited to the parade to represent all those veterans in her district, it would shame her into behaving better. Don't you think? She
knows no shame. Maxine Waters knows no shame. And most of these folks, the problem, I think, and I'll keep this general because I think it's probably a little on both sides. I think that there is both sides wouldn't go to the other side's event regardless. And I think Maxine Waters is the epitome of someone who could care less, but there's a lot of people that are probably in that bucket as well. And so I think the idea of shaming them, they know no shame.
Fran,
I think those who know no shame, it's a bipartisan thing these days.
Fran,
Yeah, you did.
Fran, what do you like about two-way?
I liked that I can hear everyone's opinions. I like where you're having a debate and I can hear everything. I watched the Al Jazeera interview of the IAEA, is that how you say it? Person before US bombed. And it was pretty illuminating because I was listening to someone who was very against what they came out with. So I liked the balance. I like to hear everything, and I like that y'all all talk.
Thank you, Fran. Grateful to you. Thanks for being part of two-way. KJ, welcome in.
Hi.
Thanks for joining. What's on your mind? Tell people where you are.
I'm from Rochester, New York. So a New Yorker, and I'm wondering if you guys saw the tweet that's going around of Peter Thiel's email that he sent in 2020, where he discusses. I'll add it in the link after, but basically he's talking, to summarize it really quick. He said, I don't want to suggest our policy should be to embrace millennial attitudes. The long and the short of it is he says, the concern of the rise, like disenfranchised millennials. And he's saying that without like an economic incentive, right? Because they owe so much money from colleges. Housing is so expensive that like America has worked because of you could buy a home, right? You had a capital, like you had a financial stake in the system. And, as we run through this mayoral race in New York City, I think the New York City housing market is so unique because the supply has underpaced demand for years and years and years. And there's all these complicated regulations. But I think, and I don't know, Mark, if you guys are looking it up, but I think this email is really telling about the younger generation. And if it's true, like, how do we fix it? I can read it if you want, unless you found it.
How long is it?
If I put it up.
Yeah, just read like the first two sentences, if you would.
Okay. I would not suggest that our policy would be to embrace millennial attitudes uneffectively. I'd be the last person to advocate for socialism. But 70% of millennials say they're pro-socialist. We need to understand. From a perspective of broken generation compact, there seems to be a pretty straightforward answer to me. Namely, when one has too much student debt or housing, it's too unaffordable, then one has negative capital for a long time, find it hard to start accumulating capital in the form of real estate. And if one has no stake in the capitalist system, one may well turn against it.
Okay, Kelly, thank you. Dan, thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a really smart point. I mean, whenever you have a victory like we have, like with Mondami, you always want to ask why. What is it that they've tapped into? And I think, look, this is a generation that came of age in the financial crisis and COVID. They've been through a lot. As you say, New York is expensive. So is Paris. So is, Los Angeles and Tokyo, and a lot of cities are. It doesn't mean it's not an issue, but what these voters are expressing, their frustration with, inflation, with costs, with the economy, with opportunity, the feeling a little bit of helplessness. Look, I think Trump tapped into this a little bit in 2024. I think it's why he's made inroads in some of these ethnic working class, racial working class cohorts that traditionally Republicans have not, because he focused on the issues they care about. He spoke to them. And I think while I may not agree with what Mamdani is proposing to do for them, right? That's a political discussion. He has focused like a laser beam on it. And I said this the other day, it's not just what, but how, right? How do you reach them? How can you have them hear you and consistently kind of understand what you're saying? And, that there's a lot of lessons there.
Sean,
and I agree.
Sean.
Big deal.
I just put a link to it in the chat.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Helpful. So two things I'd say. Number one, I I sort of, as you were reading that, was thinking of the White House sent out talking points on the big beautiful bill, and one of them was these savings accounts that the president wants every American to have going forward so that they kind of grow. And it started me thinking that like either they were thinking about this problem or, but it makes a lot more because I've never been a big fan of things like that. But it sort of got me thinking that, you know what, you get kids invested in the market earlier and understand the stake of capitalism, compound interest, all that kind of stuff. Maybe that's a smart thing. The second thing that kind of comes to mind, and I wish Peter had addressed this, is that like we have a breakdown in our education system when we're starting to tell people that, like when I went through school, right, we talked about all of these countries. Obviously, the Cold War was still going on, and there was a sense of why these systems aren't working and why they fail. And I think we've now started to glamorize socialism and communism in a way that isn't true, and also leads people to believe things that are not productive in the long run. And so I actually look at a lot of the sort of K through 12 elementary and say, what are we doing? What are we teaching kids that we don't think that think that somehow socialism is an acceptable form of government or actually a long-term and viable option?
Well,
Yeah,
but
I
I mean,
think
I will say though, there's a part of Trump's activist government, right, where the government is going to get involved in a lot of different ways, use the power of government to bend industries and put the government between private industry and the people in a lot of instances. It's not socialism, obviously, but it's a very activist government that traditional conservatives had a real problem with. So Trump taps into this a little bit.
I think our founding fathers, I think Thomas Jefferson was very clear that our education system was also there to teach like patriotic values and about our system. And if we've lost some of that, yeah, Sean, to your point, maybe kids aren't as connected. And we're far enough away from the
Soviet Union
collapse of the Soviet Union that a lot of people don't understand. They haven't seen it bad.
Yeah. Kelly, thank you. Really smart points. We're grateful to you for bringing them up. Thank you so much. Richard, welcome in. Unmute yourself, please. Tell folks where you are and what's on your mind for Sean and Dan.
I'm in California. It's really early here, so I haven't been logging in this method recently, but I watch every morning. I got two questions addressed to all three of you. After last hour's Pentagon news conference, what are your thoughts specifically on CNN Natasha Bertrand's irresponsible reporting that was picked up by most of the rest of the mainstream media, especially the New York Times? And what are your thoughts on, like, Representatives AOC and Jasmine Crockett, Senators Mark Kelly, Chris Murphy, and Richard Blumenthal, who jumped to conclusions with the initial battle damage assessment, and I think basically humiliated themselves? What are your thoughts on those two topics?
Richard, did you join the program late today?
I saw the beginning part of it. Yes, I saw you address some of it, but you didn't address specifically Natasha Bertrand.
Okay, so again, I'm not commenting on her previous reporting. I tend to agree with some of the analysis made of her previous reporting, but I'll say what I said before. It's not germane here. The New York Times didn't just quote her. They claim, as many other news organizations did, to have gotten the same quote unquote leak of that material. They framed it as she did and her news organization did in a reprehensible manner. But it's not about her. And all the people who are focusing on her are preying on her because of the weakness that's manifest because of her past errors, and trying to act like it's all another fake news thing by the liberal media out to get Donald Trump. That may be true, but it's not about her in this case. I'm not defending her. I'm not saying her report was done well. I don't think it was. But the New York Times didn't just quote her as part of a conspiracy. They got the same leak, as did many other places. They chose, like CNN did, to frame it in a completely misleading way.
Well, I watched the reporting yesterday, and it seemed, at least from my vantage point, 3,000 miles away, that almost all these media outlets ran with that report like it was gospel.
Well, they
And
did,
yeah,
but they didn't say CNN's reporting X. They said we're reporting X, previously first reported by CNN. But that doesn't mean that they relied on her reporting. Sean seems eager to speak, and then Dan.
Thank you. Fran has taught me to hold. Here's what I would say. The way this works, and it's not just this story. Look at any story in the past. The Washington Post gets a scoop, and then within 8 seconds, the New York Times is able to confirm what the Washington Post said, and CNN is able to confirm what the New York Times said. The Washington Post, like, they wouldn't have written it if she hadn't. I mean, so she set the narrative. That's what. Yes, that's it's.
I mean, maybe, but
Yes,
her news.
no.
but-
I think that passed as prologue in this case, and she continued. So look, the fact is that if they were all wrong, then that speaks volumes even to a worse problem. The
Yes.
bottom line is she blazed the trail, and then they were like, well, she went first. Let's say that we matched it. We'll say that they got it first, but that we matched their reporting. And then guess what? The Washington Post matches their reporting. Wow, within seconds. It's amazing how that works. And they all somehow get
I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you. I apologize. You're being sarcastic. I don't think in this case they didn't match it. They did match it. They wouldn't have gone with that story without matching it. They wouldn't have. Sometimes news reporters do that, but not in this case. We wouldn't go with quoting a government a classified government document without matching it. I don't believe that.
Mark, but I agree with you to a degree, but her track record on so many
agreed.
Once she
Agreed.
jumps the gun,
But
then they go. This is like the Steele dossier. The second that BuzzFeed went, then CNN goes, "Well, BuzzFeed went, so we've got to go." Like that's how it works.
But they wanted to go. This is
But it
just a
never goes
slice,
the other
just a
direction.
slice. Well, that's true too. Just a slice of salami, and then Dan come in.
And
two
real quick
things,
on
two
Richard's
things.
second.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well,
The
let's-
second piece of
yeah.
Richard's point, the senators and the other Democratic leaders in the House, Jim Himes and others, who went with this. One, just again, I will go back and leave it at this. If you who are outraged about Signal and then somehow don't have a problem with participating in the actual leaking of classified information, full stop, shut your mouth.
I will agree with you that CNN's framing egged on the other news organizations to frame it the way they did. But I think they were inclined to do it for the same reason that CNN was inclined to do it. Dan.
Richard, do you think it's possible or likely the president in his initial statements of obliteration exaggerated things?
I think that's certainly a possibility. But after I watched the news conference from the Pentagon last hour, for me, that's like 5 o'clock in the morning. All I could think of was watching these mostly Democrat, but a few Republican politicians in both houses of Congress that almost were denigrating is not the word I would want to use, but they were more inclined to believe this report than they were this what is now acknowledged a low level of confidence battle damage assessment. And they all did it. It was universal.
Well, but okay. I mean, we talked about it in the beginning of the show. Let me just ask you one other question. Do you think it's likely that Pete Hegseth took his orders to go out there and sell a message, and that if he in any way, shape, or form contradicted the president on this, that he would still be?
He did contradict the president.
Well, no, but if he leaned in and said, we just don't know, it's too early to make these definitive statements, just like Sean did, the Israelis are going to be the one. Do you think he'd still be Secretary of Defense potentially within a couple of days?
Dan, I think that, yes, I think he would still be Secretary of Defense because Tulsi Gabbard is still DNI. Okay.
And how did that go when she spoke up? A little bit.
Well, I saw a lot of the mainstream media framing it a particular way. She was in the Situation Room. They conveniently ignored her presence there.
Oh, no, look, I get it. But my point is simply this. Trump exaggerates so often and so frequently that we all kind of roll our eyes and say it's Trump being Trump.
We expect it almost.
Well, and then, okay, and you're laughing about it. And then on the other point, we all admit that if anybody deviates on Team Trump, the hammer comes down, right? MAGA comes down. You have to be 100% on Team Trump. There can be no real daylight in public with Trump. So
Dan,
therefore,
there's no unanimity on from the right to far right. There is a discussion, there is dissension that we don't see with your, I don't want to say
okay,
side.
but that's a different subject about Charlie Kirk. Anyway, my point is simply,
I didn't mention Charlie Kirk.
I know, but my point is simply, to me, it is appropriate to report on a report. It is appropriate to call out when the president exaggerates and misleads, right? So it is a problem now that because the left hates him so much, they turn that into like the battle cry of "we got him," right? And it drives me nuts on that front. I agree with those.
I agree, Dan. I agree with you there.
Yeah,
I definitely do.
But we've got to call out Trump for his actions.
Real quick, just one quick point on the dissension model. I believe there was a rather epic showdown between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz. I believe that Charlie Cook, Mark Levin have all expressed, Laura Loomer, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I would actually say that we had an extremely healthy and very open debate about Iran.
And did Tucker Carlson call and apologize to Trump? And did Trump make sure everyone knew that?
Well, first of all, I don't know what Tucker said or didn't say, but I will say what Trump said afterwards. But I don't think that my point is that if you don't think that was a very healthy and wide open debate about our actions in Iran,
well, I agree, Sean.
Big beautiful bill. My point is we're having plenty of dissension and discussion on policy.
Yeah, Richard, thank you. Sorry, Richard, sorry, unmute real quick. I apologize. You got to unmute, Richard. Sorry, Richard. You want to get your last point in? Unmute and make it. All right, I apologize, Matt. Real quick because we're at time, but good welcome in. Tell folks where you are today and what's on your mind.
No, back in Pennsylvania today. Thanks, guys. Just a quick question about the current state of the Democratic Party. So, just this week, we had the reaction to the Iran strike, AOC escorting Khalil out of jail while we were hitting Iran, and now Dami seems like the guy who's going to keep, Snake Plissken busy helping people escape from New York. So it feels like, we always talk about this in the show here, the policies are so out of touch. And, during the Obama years, the Dems kind of got wiped out in elections at state and local levels. Did that take out the natural development succession plan of future party leaders? And was the radical takeover of the party in your mind inevitable, or do you think that Obama wipeout created a vacuum that allowed it to happen?
All right, that's a great question and requires a doctoral dissertation rather than a quick answer. But Dan's going to do a quick answer.
Sure. The quick answer is Joe Biden was extremely weak. He outsourced personnel to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, and you got a very progressive, out of control White House with no strong leader. And so that it just sprinkled out.
Matt, thank you. Come back. We'll talk about that topic more in future episodes, but it's a great question. Thank you. Sean, what do you have tonight?
Well, it's a great question because if you want to know when my dog went nuts, it's because I've got a huge panel. Chris Stegall, Brianna Morello is going to be on, and then Patrice Onwuka, who's the better half of WMAL in the morning. And apparently that didn't sit well with somebody who decided to just show up at my house, who wants to so badly be on the show tonight that he literally drove to Rhode Island. Yeah. This is embarrassing.
It's not entirely accurate.
He didn't get a birthday shout out, and then he wants to be on the panel. Look, this is
Mr. Spicer, the bathrooms and bedrooms upstairs are all cleaned up. Do you want me to start to work down here?
The lawn, Larry, the lawn.
I'll be right back. Thanks.
God.
All right, that's a good set piece. Larry, hello. All right, believe it or not, as this two-way ends, there are not one or two or three two ways to participate in today and watch, but quattro. Quattro. Is that four?
Yes.
First one, 4 o'clock. Dan and his colleagues on the group chat, Emma Jo and Nina and Batya and Robbie and Dan. Group chat, we'll be talking about all the news of the day, and you can get in on the conversation. America's only interactive, fully participatory chat program. Join them at 4 o'clock. And then stick around because at 5 o'clock, they're doing another program that will air next week. It's what we call in the business an evergreen show, but you'll want to participate in this one. They're going to be talking about the 2028 presidential campaign. So join them for a group chat doubleheader, 4 Eastern, 5 Eastern. Then at 6 Eastern, I'll be here with a little program we call Two-Way Tonight. My guests will include Jim Bognet, the Republican strategist from Pennsylvania, and Pastor Alan Jackson of the World Outreach Church in Tennessee. Join me for that. And then right after that, at 7 Eastern, Michael Moynihan will be here. And Michael's guests, live at 7, will be two of our favorites on two-way, Bridget Fedesi and Ethan Strauss, a uniquely two-way conversation. The gang will all be there. So,
I like it.
and then on Next Up later today, Megan McCain will be my guest. So it's, I believe, is that every two-way host?
Wow.
Will be on at some point
Yeah, look at
today
that.
on either
Yeah.
two-way or Next Up. So join us all for that. And we appreciate your patronage here. Dan, what are you doing later today? Two double
Well,
episodes.
I've got the group chat and stuff, and I also want to just say that we have no air conditioning. I got 4 hours of sleep last night, and I felt bad that I snapped at Mark and Sean to let me finish. But I see the chat loves that I snapped at Mark and Sean and want more. But folks,
No more air conditioning for you.
Peace, love, and understanding. Let's.
Okay. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in 23 hours on this program. Very grateful to all the questions, all the participation, and have a good day.
Thursday.